welcome back to Operation Evil. This is episode 91. I'm calling it Starved to Death. I'm your host, Nyoka.
I'm Rachel.
And I don't have any housekeeping announcements, but before I jump into the story, I do want to give a warning because this episode involves the death of a 7-week-old baby, and it contains very explicit sexual conversation. So just please be warned if there is a child with you. Some people listen to podcasts in their car on their way to work or whatever. Let's just go ahead and turn that off and listen to it later.
7 weeks?
7-week-old. Yeah. So I just wanted to give that warning. If you have children in the car, maybe listen to this later.
Maybe I should listen to it later.
No, you have to listen to it now. Sorry. I am approaching this one differently because in this story, you're going to hear a little less of me, a little more of the actual suspects, because the interrogation really tells the story more than any article I could find. So I wanted you to hear it from them themselves. So a lot of audio in this one. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I think about this all the time. Like, I don't know if you do, but I think about how some of the worst people in the world can become parents so easily, and they like bring all these kids into a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems unfair because I know so many people that have fertility problems that would make the best of parents, and they're unable to do so. And it just seems unfair, unbalanced. I don't know. I don't understand it, but I do think that all the time. Just like all the good people go first too, like, I don't know. I just think about those things and it just seems not right. I don't know. But this thought like constantly came through to me, like it came in my head going through this because I'm like, oh my gosh, So this story takes place in Oregon back in 2015. So it's not that old. Actually, January 22nd, 2015, to be exact. It was the day that the Douglas County Sheriff's deputies said an ambulance was called to a home for a report of a baby who had stopped breathing. And efforts were made to revive the baby, but it was unsuccessful. The baby boy, whose name was Data Hancock, unfortunately passed away at 7 weeks old. Now, an investigation began to figure out what happened to this baby. The state medical examiner's office would perform an autopsy, and the detectives would bring in his parents, Data's parents, or Data. I'm sorry, it's pronounced Data, not Data. It's Data, but it's Data. He would bring in Data's parents, which was 21-year-old Amanda Marie Hancock and 26-year-old Stephen Michael Williams Jr. for questioning. Now, the audio will tell you everything because the interrogations are with both of them separately. And I'm going to start with Amanda because she was the one actually questioned first in the real timeline. And the detective, he begins like introducing himself, gets her basic information. You know how they start any interrogation. He reads her rights, just as you should, so you can't ask questions. He starts off easy, like just easy questions. And he even like asks about the couple's 2-year-old. So they have an older son whose name was Q. And he'll ask Amanda questions about Q and how things went when she had him and how the breastfeeding worked out with Q. And basically she said that she only breastfed him for 3 weeks because he, quote, drained her completely, end quote. So she would then switch him to formula. So, people breastfeed, it doesn't work out, that's fine. And then you do formula. It happens, right? And she recognized that. And she was also asked if she had prenatal care when she was pregnant with Q. and asked if, after Q was born, did she take him to the doctor? Did he have medical care? All that good stuff. And the answer was yes to both. Yes, she had prenatal care. Yes, he saw a pediatrician. So now I'm going to play you some audio because the detective switches from asking about their oldest son to what the couple's side business was, because this is very important to the whole investigation. So I'm going to start that right now.
Talk a little bit about yours and Stephen, right? But he goes by Michael, correct? Okay. So talk a little bit about yours and Michael's business that you have.
Okay. This is one thing that I have been wanting to explain, because his brother, when he said that we throw adult parties, that was something he was saying to make himself feel better because he has no job. Okay. We pay for everything inside the house. He has no pull for anything except for food stamps now that he got back to Mexico. Okay. What we used to do in California, we started to put together a production company for any and all entertainment. This was revolved around like EDM music festivals, dancing teams, and really anything that people have passions for. We have been working on adult campsites for a while. Since I turned 19, I've been working on the campsite, and that was a separate venture from our production company, and we had started getting ideas to throw adult parties. We looked up all of the laws and what steps to take, and we threw a couple inside of hotels, but then we held back on that because we had more responsibilities to take care of with our kids and our normal job and bills. But right now, the only job that we work is online as cam models.
Okay. So, kind of dumb in this area, I guess. So when you say adult parties, what do you mean by that?
The few parties that we threw in California, one was a platonic naked tea party where 6 or 7 adults went into a hotel. We all got naked, drank tea together, and watched movies, and that was that. And then there was another party that I organized, but I didn't show up to. What it was for a girl that I had met. She wanted to be gang things, so I organized the event for her and helped her find suitable guys that were trustworthy. But really, I just would organize things for people to go to, so then that way they feel safe and there was other people around. Because in the fetish lifestyle, people are very open, and it's not safe if you don't know what you're doing.
Sure. So now you said you guys just strictly kind of do an online model, and what does that consist of?
Well, anything that I'm not a parent for, like it has to do with me taking a shower, then I'll turn on the camera and take a shower on camera. If it has to do with me milking myself into a bottle, then I'll milk myself in a bottle. I don't do that now that the data is passed. Mm-hmm. If it has to do with me just feeling like chatting with people, then that's what I do. It really just depends on our mood and what we feel like doing that day.
So, do y'all venture into sex on movies or online?
From time to time, it's not like our usual thing. We always have it offered, but usually when we do that, it's because we want to, not because somebody paid us. People don't usually pay for the sexual stuff because there's other models that do that, and they're better at it. I'm better at the make your life go really well and you hang out with me and just you happen to see boobs and other things along the way because I felt like it.
So how do you get paid for this?
I get paid through a LLC called Crosstown Services through the main site that I work. It's basically a tip-based job. People buy tokens on the site that I work. The site takes a certain amount out, and then the model gets whatever's left over of the remaining. And then they cash out, and every 2 weeks they get a check.
So I guess on average, on a 2 weeks basis, what is an average payout for you guys?
An average payout is around $300 to $400.
Okay. About how many shows do you do a day?
It goes back and forth. Sometimes I won't even work for a full-on week out of the pay period, and I'll still make that much. It really depends, because sometimes I'm on for hours and I don't make anything, and then sometimes I log on and all of a sudden I've made $100 and I haven't even said hello. Like, it really just depends.
And how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing it for 2 years. He's been doing it off and on. I say it's my job because he doesn't do it as often. He has an account. He has the possibility to, but I'm usually the more work inclined and he's more the parent inclined to go do those types of things.
So what are some of the things that you offer that people would pay for?
I offer things like me getting naked. I offer bondage if they want it, which they never do. I offer cum shows if they want to see it, which they never do. I offer shower shows. Mainly what I offer, though, this is the main thing that I do for work, and I have raffles and I have clubs that people can participate in to make them want to come back. Like, I have a monthly raffle where if they pay me so much, then they get a ticket, and every month there's a raffle drawing where they can win, like, my Kick ID address, which is a mobile chatting app, and then my Text Plus number, because that's an app instead of my actual phone number, so they can text me without me giving out my personal information, and pictures from time to time, but I suck at taking pictures.
Okay.
I never get around to that.
Okay, so prominently, what's probably the most successful paying thing that you do?
My raffle.
Your raffle. Okay. So you also mentioned you would milk. So what was that?
After I had Data, well, before I had Data, while I was still pregnant, I started lactating early, and I had noticed that a lot of people were into it, and that was a big face of my money. And so I would hand express myself into a bottle, and I would store the milk for whenever I needed it. I offered if anyone was interested to sell my milk, but I never ended up selling it.
Okay. And did you do this also while Data was born?
After Data was born, yes. Whenever he would be sleeping or Mikey would be watching him, I would go and express myself on camera, and then after I was done, I would log off and go feed my son with what I had expressed, and then breastfeed him as well. And then once I was done with that, I would go back and do the same thing.
Would you always save the milk, or?
Not always. Sometimes it was like on a blanket or towel because people asked me to and paid for me to do it somewhere other than a bottle, but I tried to save it every time.
Okay.
When asked about like how often she would feed the baby, she said every 3 to 4 hours, and she even had a reminder alarm on her phone. That way, if she was in the middle of working or doing something, that phone would give her the reminder to feed her baby. That's what she needed.
Wow.
Yeah. When asked what all she would feed him and who primarily did the feedings, she said only breast milk, about 2 ounces, and that she did most of the feedings. She said the baby had no problem latching onto her breast, and she preferred to hand pump into the bottle, though, because then she could like see exactly how much he was eating. Amanda would also go on to say that, you know, he never like vomited up the food and never had strange behavior or anything like that. She also didn't give any indications of any like troubled sleeping patterns. And I mean, according to her, like everything was fine. She didn't see any issues. But Amanda never took the baby to the doctor after she had him. She never had prenatal care either. And she has tons of excuses for all of this. And that's what I'm going to play for you is some of her excuses and other shocking information.
I hate how confident she is, like talking.
Yeah, like nothing's wrong. It's kind of annoying, to be honest with you. Okay. And here we go.
Data, you had no prenatal care, correct?
Correct. I went to the doctor once while I was pregnant for proof of pregnancy, and then every time that I called my doctor, they wouldn't answer or call me back. And that scares me. If my doctor doesn't answer, it makes me not want to go because it seems like they don't care. And so I tried to get medical insurance so I could go and find a new doctor, and California's health insurance is really wonky, and it didn't go through until we moved up here. I ended up getting a piece of mail saying that I had Medi-Cal finally.
Okay. And so how did you get to the hospital when Data was born?
We called 911.
Okay. And they sent an ambulance?
Yeah, they sent an ambulance. I started going through contractions. I wasn't sure, but I had a feeling they were contractions, and I didn't want a chance having the baby at the house.
Sure.
So we called 911.
Okay. And how long were you in the hospital before you had Data?
We went around noon or 1 in the afternoon on the 3rd, and he was born at 2 a.m. on the 4th. So only about 12 hours.
Okay. Any medical problems when he was born?
He had the cord wrapped around him. A couple times it wasn't too tight, but the cord was wrapped around him from what they told me. Other than that, no, there was no complications. No, tests came back bad. All of his cultures came back correct.
Okay. Was there any drug use prior to him being born?
Just marijuana.
And how often would you smoke marijuana?
I smoke marijuana every day.
How many times a day?
I mixed mine with tobacco, and so I would go and take a hit whenever I would feel anxious or if my stomach was upset, and then go back and go do what I was doing. So quantity-wise, maybe like a gram or 2 a day. Well, less than I was smoking before I got pregnant.
Okay. Any other drug use?
I took a pain pill once or twice while I was pregnant for my teeth pain and my polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any alcohol use? Okay. So how long did you stay at the hospital?
We stayed for a little over 72 hours. They had told us at first, after the first day, we were going to get to leave early after 48, but then the pediatrician told us about the culture test that had to come back. And once we understood that we had to stay up until the 72 hours, we decided to stay for the best interest of Data. But they didn't tell us any concerns to be concerned about with him. They said that he was completely healthy.
Then when you got home, how were things at home? Like when you first got home with Data?
They were a bit overwhelming at first because having a toddler that doesn't know about babies around a newborn is very nerve-wracking. But it was good. He was a very happy baby.
Okay. And during, you had an appointment the first, or at 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, they called me because I had explained to them we live 50 miles away, and so it would probably be easier if they called me. And so they called me, and we scheduled an appointment after they had that first checkup. And when his appointment started getting closer, I was looking for a ride, and I finally found one, and then the next day the lady canceled on me. And so I ended up calling his doctor 2 days before he passed and explained to them that I didn't have a ride. I was trying, but I might not be able to make it to his appointment. And they said that that was fine. They would take him off the schedule, and if we show up, we could do a walk-in appointment.
And so what happened with the very first one?
The very first one, they called me. They asked me how he was doing. They asked me how much he was eating. They asked me how I was feeling. And then that was basically that.
But you didn't show up to the appointment, right?
No, they only had a phone call appointment.
Okay. So how, when you got home with Data, how soon did you start doing shows again?
3 days later.
3 days later. And what kind of shows were you doing at that point?
I was only doing lactation and shower shows.
Okay. And how often would you do them?
Twice a day whenever I would work, but then I wouldn't work for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
up until like 2 weeks before he passed, I wasn't working very often. I was really tired. Whenever I would work, it was about twice a day.
Okay. And when you would do the lactation shows, how much do you think you would lactate?
2 to 4 ounces, depending on how long I was on.
Okay. Okay. And last time when they talked to you, you mentioned something about an infection.
That got mentioned also at the hospital, and it's always a concern with a breastfeeding mom, and I was researching about it a lot because they never told me about any infection the first time when I had Data, or when I had Q, they never told me about infection. And then when I had Data, they told me about women get infection in their breast, and so it made me sort of paranoid about it. I was reading up on it a lot. I'm not sure if I had it. I was really paranoid that I did, so I was constantly massaging my boobs and helping myself. I didn't want to be infected.
So now you're saying you didn't have an infection?
Not to my knowledge. My boobs hurt, but I don't think they hurt more than a normal breastfeeding mom. I didn't breastfeed for that long with Q, so I don't know.
Okay. And you also mentioned that you thought your ducts
were getting clogged. Yeah, my left one, it was starting to have bumps, and so I would massage it a lot and warm compresses. It was sort of worrying for me, but my milk still flowed. It just hurt more for it to flow.
Mm-hmm. So at any time during the almost 7 weeks that you had data, did you ever stop producing milk at all? No. So your ducts never got clogged to where...
Not fully, no.
No, but you were still able to produce milk.
Yeah.
Okay. And no known infection that you had?
No.
Okay.
And I always checked for red lines because that's one thing that the doctor told me that if I ever have red lines on my boobs, to go in immediately and call 911. And so I would always check and make sure. And there was a couple times where I would see one of my veins and I would ask Mikey, like, is that a red line? Like, can you tell me? Please tell me I don't have an infection. Because it scared me. I've never been told about that my whole entire life, training to be a mom. Like, I've never heard about a breast infection.
So why did you tell us last time that you did have an infection and that your milk ducts were clogged and that there was a period of about 3 weeks that you were not able to produce milk?
I said I was not able to produce milk as quickly, and I said I was scared that I had an infection. I didn't say that I had one because I did not have one to my knowledge. I was scared, yes.
No, I'm not going to argue with you, but no, that is what you said. I mean, you said that when we took you to Mercy and we did the search warrant and had you pump your breast, one of the things that you said...
I was told that there was an infection by one of the ladies, and I said that makes a lot of sense. That's hard. You were talking to one of the ladies, and she said an infection about the breast milk, and then you guys tested me for infection.
Yeah, there was no infection.
Well, that's what I heard. That's why you guys drew blood the second time. So I said, that makes a lot of sense.
No, we drew blood the second time because the vials that they used initially were not the right ones to be able to test your white blood cells.
Fully understanding. I heard the word infection, and then there was more blood drawn, so that's what I was under the impression.
Yeah, but we hadn't even got to that point. This was why you were pumping your breast. You specifically said that you had not been able to produce milk the last 3 weeks, and it had just started coming in within the last 3 days, is what you told us.
I said it wasn't easy to. I didn't say that I stopped, because I didn't stop. I was feeding him the whole time.
Correct. Well, I'm just saying that's what you said.
I know, and I also hadn't slept for 2 days prior to that because of everything going on. But I'm confirming that I never stopped producing milk.
Okay.
It was a little hard for the 3 weeks before he passed, but I didn't stop. If I would have, then I would have gotten formula.
Okay. And so y'all didn't supplement food or anything else other than formula or milk?
No, 2 days before he passed, I gave him the mushed up, like, juices from some peas when I was eating because he looked really curious, but I didn't actually feed him it. I just let him taste the flavor.
Mm-hmm.
But, no,
give him water?
Water, I give him water after every 2 feedings. I give him about 2 ounces every time, sometimes 3.
And were you enrolled in any other services when you left the hospital?
No, they told me that they were going to help me get food stamps and WIC, and they never handed me the paper, and since I was excited to go home, I didn't think about it. And when they called the second week, I asked them to send me that paperwork, and they said that they would, but they never ended up doing it. And so I was basically just playing the waiting game, hoping they would send it to me.
When you got that pamphlet let me back up, did you receive a pamphlet from the hospital when you left, like a folder?
Yes.
Okay, did you ever review the things in that folder?
I looked through the first few pages about what to do once you get home and how many diapers they're supposed to have. I didn't look through the whole entire book. I was meaning to, I just never got around to it because I was busy.
Okay. So the application for the WIC should have been in that folder. So maybe you didn't get that far in the
Maybe
folder.
I just didn't get that far. I asked them, they didn't mention it was in the folder.
Gotcha. Okay. Did you ever meet with a lactation consultant when you were in the hospital?
They came the first day after Data was born, and they asked me how I was doing, and they said that I was lactating correctly and that he was latching good, and so they didn't have any concerns with me. When I had my second week appointment on the phone, I had told them that I would like to set up a meeting with the lactation specialist, but she never called me.
Gotcha. So prior to Data's death, was there anything that you noticed that was different about him?
The day before he passed, he started acting a little bit weirder than usual. He was a lot more quiet during the day. Like, he was a loud, happy baby, not like fussy, but he was loud about things. And the day before he passed, he was really quiet, which made me curious. And me and Mikey had decided that if he was the same the next day, that we were going to end up calling the hospital because it kind of worried us. It's not usual for a baby to be loud and active and then 1 second just want to lay there and stare at the walls. And that's how it was the whole full day before he passed away. Was he just wanted to lay there and stare at things. He barely made any noises, and it really worried me.
Okay. Where did you then? And why didn't you call in?
We discussed because there was no, he wasn't, fully shut down. It wasn't like he had given up on the world. It was just that he was content with everything. That's what it seemed like. But it worried me because it was different. But he was really happily content. He just laid there and smiled and kind of looked at us and would make a few noises, but not the same noises he was used to. And so we talked about it, and we both agreed that we might not want to jump the gun, but if he's acting the same, we might want to call the doctor the next morning. And so we went through that night, and then in the morning he ended up passing.
How's that jumping the gun?
With Q, I went to the hospital for everything, and the bills that I got from that were ridiculous and overwhelming, and I still owe those bills in Santa Rosa. I went to the doctor for him coughing weird. I went to the doctor for him crawling when he was 2 weeks old, and that scared the crap out of me because he started moving around, and I was like, is this normal? Is there something wrong with my baby? And I would go to the doctor for every single reason, and every time they told me that I was a hypochondriac. And so, because we weren't fully set up with Medicaid up here, we didn't want to do that and have a bunch of bills hanging over our heads, and so we figured that we would give it a day and see how he did. Because there was no full-on emergency. It's not like he was coughing or choking or like he stopped breathing like when he did. So we figured we would give it a day and see if he was just adjusting and growing up. Because babies do change randomly, just not that drastically. Then the next morning, while we were outside, we had mentioned, before he passed, we had mentioned to each other that he was acting the same now, and that there was no concerns. And so when we went back in there, all of a sudden he wasn't breathing.
But if there was a drastic change like that, from him being this happy, lively baby to bam, he's like a complete
don't know exactly what I should have done in that situation because I've never experienced it. I might have, should have called, I don't know, but under my impression he was still healthy and he was still happy, and that's usually what you look for a baby. As long as they're happy and they're healthy, then they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I checked his ears, I checked his eyes, I snapped my fingers, made sure he heard me. I did all the checkup things that the doctor told me, and he responded just fine, so I figured maybe he was just changing.
Mm-hmm. So once data passed, then how long was it before you started working again?
That night I logged on to talk to my fans because I'm a real person with my fans. They know almost everything about my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I logged on to cry to them about everything that was going on. But I didn't full on start working until 3-4 days later, but it wasn't really working. It was more logging on my cam, waiting a few hours, not really paying attention to anyone, and logging off. It just started becoming work again.
Okay. How long after data passed was it before you posted new photos or a video or anything like that?
I don't really post full on new photos. I might have posted a picture of my tits the next day because someone asked for it, but I barely take pictures or videos. It's very rare that I do.
Okay. Are any photos or videos that you took of yourself lactating or expressing yourself, were them done before or after Data was born? After? Okay.
Okay. So soon after a few more questions, the detective will leave the room and he just lets her stew for a bit. And then he comes back in and he is ready to confront her with the facts of their findings and their investigation.
She talks so freaking much.
Do you see how she was like blaming everyone but herself?
Yeah, like the
they didn't call me back.
Yeah.
They didn't do this. They didn't give me the paperwork. They didn't. It was everyone else's fault.
It's so disgusting too, though, how like she's just talking about it like I don't know, like it's just a thing. Like
no emotion. Are you ready to hear the detective confront this woman?
Ready.
Yeah, here we go.
So, like I said earlier, we have some preliminary results regarding the autopsy. And preliminary just means basically we haven't got all the labs and blood work yet, but the state medical examiner has, did the autopsy and, basically made a determination based on the autopsy. So there's a lot of things that you told me today regarding the feedings, regarding the diaper use, the number of wet diapers, the number of poopy diapers, and things that kind of led up to January 22nd that based on the scientific portion of it and I guess not necessarily scientific portion, but the medical portion of it that I believe to be inaccurate. Okay? And the reason being is the cause of death for Data was basically he starved to death. Okay? And the medical examiner and the chief, I don't know if he's a chief, but he's a doctor at Dornbecker, can't prove that based on the autopsy and what Data looked like when he passed away.
Okay, I asked for my son to be preserved because I wanted a second medical examiner, and then that request never got past me. My attorney requested for that, and now we have the remains of my son, and I wish that I could have a second examiner because I didn't starve my son.
Well, you did, and here's why. Okay, your son had 0 fat on him. 0. He weighed approximately, 7, 8 ounces less from the time he was born until he passed away. Once he got to the medical examiner's office, I may have the weight broke down here, but I know when the deputy ME weighed him, after the fact, he weighed 5.7 ounces. Okay, when Dad was born, he weighed 5.12 ounces. When she weighed him, she being the state medical examiner, weighed him at autopsy, he weighed 5.3 ounces, which is 0.9 ounces less than, or basically 9 ounces less than what he weighed when he was born.
What he was eating?
Well, he wasn't eating enough. Okay, he had nothing whatsoever.
Could there have been just no nutrients in my milk?
I've had your milk tested. Okay, there was no parasites, no nothing in your milk. Your white blood cell count was perfect. So there was nothing going on.
Well, I wasn't getting anything.
Well,
it makes no sense to me. I was feeding my baby. I made sure I had an alarm on my phone even.
there was nothing inside his intestines when the autopsy was done.
What? That doesn't make any sense. I feed him all the time.
Here's what I think was going on. You may have thought you were feeding, and maybe he was getting some milk, but for the fact that you were using your milk to make money off of.
I didn't sell it, so I don't know.
But you didn't sell it, but you were using your milk, lactating basically, to make money on camera. And you even said you wasted some of the milk by squirting it on a towel or a blanket or whatever.
I figured, why not make money for something I had to do anyways? You have to milk yourself when you're breastfeeding.
You're right, but what is that? You're producing the milk for what?
I was producing the milk for him. I was just getting paid for it because I could.
So basically, she just disagrees with him the whole time. And the detective said that they found no milk in the house, only bottles of water. And at the end of the interrogation, she was placed under arrest. The couple's 2-year-old son, Q, was taken into protective custody. Amanda would plead not guilty to murder and other counts in the starvation death of her baby. Now it's time to discuss Stephen's interrogation and listen to some of his audio. As the detective did with Amanda, he was read his rights and was started with easy questioning. In fact, when asked the same questions regarding their oldest child, their answers did match.
How was Q fed?
Well, we go shop every day, sometimes twice a day. We cook fresh food every day.
But I'm saying when he was an infant.
Oh, as an infant, we gave him formula.
Was he breastfed at all?
We started with the breastfeeding. He didn't really like it. It was too slow for him. Because once we tried the formula, because she ran out of breast milk on the first night, or not the first night, first couple nights, she ended up, he drained her, and we had to switch going by baby formula because her breasts just weren't producing as much as he needed.
Okay.
And so and after that, he just didn't want nothing to do with the breast milk. So
Yeah. So
formula quicker.
how long do you think you guys breastfed Q?
She kept trying to breastfeed him for a good 3 months.
3
But
months.
like I said, he didn't always take to it.
Okay.
It's more of a comfort and attachment thing than a feeding thing.
And how did he do on the formula?
He loved it. He ate it up, man. As soon as he tasted it, his little eyes lit up, man. He was just super, super excited because it was obviously tasty for him, and it was, and he could eat quickly instead of at the slow pace of breastfeeding.
Yes.
So it seems like they recognize the breastfeeding issue with their first child. So why not with the second? That is just a little bit confusing to me.
What's the name of your guys' business?
Broken Wing Productions.
Broken Wing Productions. Okay. Is that LLC or?
Yeah, in California, we started to get we then got to finish getting all the paperwork in line because we ended up having to move. But we were working on getting that limited liability partnership or whatever, LLC.
LLC, yeah.
Yeah.
So what exactly does that business entail?
It's entertainment company, mostly fire dancing, go-go dancing, we throw events like small parties, get-togethers, things like that for people. It's just basically just any and all entertainment. I mean, we're considering doing weddings, things like that. It was, you know.
And with some of the content is sexual in nature, right?
No, what we do for income at the moment is sexual in nature, but it's just between me and her. So.
But you do it live, right, on the internet?
Yeah.
And so how does the pay system work? How are you making money?
It's tip-based. So we don't get like an actual like hourly wage. So basically it's all dependent on our ability to market our shows. Like we have to go on Twitters and Facebook and whatever and say we'll be on this time and whatever, and then our fans will see that and come and tip us and whatever.
So what are some of the things that you guys do?
Let's see, recently we've been doing this thing. It's like it's called Epic Porn Crawler. We call it. It's like a tabletop type of a game. Basically, it's designed after Dungeons and Dragons, but it's using their little apps and bots and things that you can set up incentives basically for people to tip. So I turn around and I set it up as like almost like a Dungeons and Dragons type of a thing, and basically people will tip for different things. Like we'll have a tip menu where they can tip for things like to get a booby flash or a close-up of my junk or whatever. But I mean, all this is done behind closed doors. So
I guess on average, how do you get paid? Like
about every 2 weeks we get paid. Usually on average I make between 50 and 100, and she usually makes between 100 and 600.
Oh wow.
So
okay.
But we both work around 30 hours in a week. So
Gotcha. So in the past, what are some of the different things that you guys have done?
All sorts of things actually. It's mostly just trying to figure out what is going to be exciting for the viewers. It's not generally actually any sex, really. I mean, on occasion we do, because it's part of it. It's adult industry or whatever. But typically it's just us hanging out and chatting and being playful towards each other and joking with people. And because like I said, it's tip-based, so we really wait. It's a lot of waiting and chatting with just whoever's in the chat room. So, but
is there a required amount that they're to tip depending on what the activity is?
Sometimes. I mean, we can set it up that way. A lot of the other models do. The only thing we have is the required amounts, really, like the set permanent is we have the tip for love thing, which is 33 tokens, which is just them showing their support, not asking for anything, just showing their support and the fact that they, enjoy our show and everything. And then the other one we call is the fast tax, which is 10 tokens, which somebody made a joke about it a few years back when we first started, but it's like if somebody's sitting there and they're sitting there and touching themselves or whatever, I have no idea if I'm sure some of them are, I don't know, they're on the other side of the chat menu, so I don't know. But anyway, so we sit and we'll call people up, be like, hey, you're typing real slow or whatever, you gotta pay that fast tax, like that sort of thing.
What does FAST stand for?
Like, basically it's masturbating, touching yourself, whatever.
It doesn't.
It was just something that somebody had joked about one day, and it just kind of stuck. So,
Gotcha. And how long have you been doing that?
Well, shoot, I've been doing, about 3 years. We've been doing it.
And y'all started in California and just brought it up with
Yeah.
you when you came up here.
Yeah, because we haven't found actual work here yet. We don't have a car to get into the other big towns, and there's not very often that a job opens up in Glendale.
Sure.
Happens occasionally, but generally they hire somebody immediately because small town.
Yeah. Have you looked for work?
Yeah, I actually went to the what do you call it, the Glenway, I believe it's called, the little grocery store right there. Well, they ended up, one of their employees left or they let him go or something, I'm not sure, but as soon as I noticed, I asked about it, but other than that, it's just been looking on Craigslist, trying to find, places that are hiring, but the trouble is I don't have a vehicle.
Correct.
So everything's all in Canyonville or Roseburg or, 25, 50 miles away.
So after the detective finishes asking about their work, he does inquire about Data, and when they got home from the hospital, he asked about his feedings and all the questions that he asked Amanda. And I just want to give a little bit of how he answered that and what he said. So here you go.
Y'all supplement him with any additional food or liquids?
We give him water, besides, the breast milk and everything. I want to make sure he stayed hydrated and everything, because I know babies, if they're just strictly breastfeeding or eating formula, that's food, it's not water, so we give him water.
And how often would you give him water?
Well, we keep a water bottle full, for him, but whenever he was acting like he's hungry or whatever, but didn't want the food, we would give him the water, and then he'd just drink it and calm down and whatever. And
How much water do you think you would drink at a time?
at a time, 2-3 ounces, just like food, eating food.
Okay. And how many times a day do you think you drink water?
Oh, shoot. I know, I'd make sure I give him water maybe 2-3 times a day. I'm not sure how many times she did, but I always had a water bottle right there with him, and just in case it was, he was looking for something besides food, so.
Okay. And was it water out of the faucet, or?
Yeah, it was water from the tap.
Okay. Any supplemental food that you guys would give him?
No.
Okay. Let's see what else I have here.
No, we didn't have any real cause to get the formula, because when we were keeping track of how much food he was getting, through the measurements on the bottle, and according to what we had been told for, child rearing in the past, he was getting at more than was recommended, so, which little guy, I'd imagine he'd be a little bit more hungry. He's got to do some more developing than your average baby.
You may have answered this, but I can't remember. About how many times a day do you think Zeta was fed?
Well, like I said, I would feed him between 3 and 4 times a day. The rest of them, she would feed him.
Okay.
Sometimes if she was working, I would feed him every 2 hours, and after she'd bring me the milk bottle and whatever. If she was working that day or whatever, and it'd just be me and my brother and the 2 boys hanging out. And,
did she ever pump and store any of the milk?
Yeah, she pumped some and stored it there's only twice that she did that, but it's because she was, her breasts were hurting and he was already full, and so she finished emptying herself out into a bottle, and we put it in the freezer and store it. Data never got the frozen milk, obviously, because she was still producing the whole time, so there was no need to, but we did have a bottle just in case, towards the end we had 2 just in case in the fridge, or the freezer.
Gotcha. Okay. Did Amanda have any complications with breastfeeding at all?
Not really. She always produced the whole time. She had some swelling of some of her ducts, which I guess we found out from the hospital was she had an infection starting or something in one of her breasts. So when they tested her breast milk, they found that out. And we didn't know. I mean, if we'd have realized that she was starting to get infected, we'd have gone and got some formula. We always have money set aside for emergency things, but there wasn't really any signs of it aside from, they told us about it, and she was kind of like she'd get real sore when she was engorged, but I didn't see anything unusual. She was still producing. It was still the right color. It was still, and I had tasted it. It tasted just like regular breast milk. I didn't taste anything funny or anything because she'd always ask me. She said, my breast hurt or whatever, and I'm concerned, like, what if an infection, what if this, what if that, and so she'd have me taste it, and to me, it didn't taste like there was anything wrong with it, or it just tastes like regular breast milk, and, but she was always the whole time concerned about it, about breastfeeding, because she, like I said, she couldn't keep track of how much she was eating when he was actually eating off the breast, and she was always concerned that all these what-if questions, or what could possibly happen. And
did you ever offer to go get formula?
Yeah. And actually, we were, every time she would complain to me about her breast hurting or whatever, or any concerns she had, I'd always say, hey, we can get formula. And she would mention that she wanted to do it, naturally, as long as her breast continued to produce normally. Mm-hmm. But it just made her nervous. Because, like I said, she couldn't keep track of it, and there's all this what ifs. Like, if you get an infection, you can't just look at it, and there's a little light that lights up and says you're infected, so.
How, when Data was put to the breast, how long do you think you would eat?
It kind of varied depending on how fast she was, expelling milk, sometimes if she was real engorged, it would only be maybe 10 minutes, before he'd get his fill. Other times, if she had done it into a bottle or whatever, he would only stay latched for 2 or 3 minutes, and then if he hadn't had a bottle and she was the one watching him while I was working, then I'm not actually sure how long he would stay on the breast, but during those times, she would actually feed him when she was the one watching him and caring for him.
So I guess how often, or not how often, but would he eat from her breast more, or would he eat from the bottle? From the bottle more?
Yeah.
And roughly how much would he eat at a time?
Between 2 to 4 ounces, usually 3 out of the bottle, and then he would breastfeed after that. Okay. For however long till he was full. But we made sure, because the doctors always recommend, 2 to 3 ounces, and then after a couple months, 3 to 4, and it just, the numbers go up after a couple weeks or whatever, and yada yada. So.
And who would predominantly feed him the most?
It was about 50-50, because like I said, we both work, so we take turns, taking care of kids, and then the other one would be working. So, it's about 50-50. Maybe I fed him a little bit more often, because she makes more money than I do, so.
I hear you.
That audio were probably the best highlights of the interrogation when it comes to Stephen. But I just want to skip to the good part now, and that is when the detective leaves him by himself, like he did with Amanda, to sit there and kind of just sweat it out for a few minutes. And he comes back into the room and lays out the facts of what really happened with the baby.
So here's the deal. So I've met with the state medical examiner, and I've also met with a pediatric doctor from like the Children's Hospital in Portland. And, I'll tell you the same thing that I told Amanda. Based on a lot of the information that you and her have both given us, there's a lot of it that I can prove to be false. Okay? The cause of death for your son was starvation. Okay? He didn't have an ounce of fat on him. He had deteriorated so much. Yes. So he had deteriorated so much that he had started basically living off of his muscles. He had no muscles. When he died, or when he was born, he weighed 5 pounds, 12 ounces. That night, we took him to the morgue. He weighed 5 pounds, 7 ounces. And when they did the autopsy, he weighed 5 pounds, 3 ounces. So during that time, he lost basically 9 ounces.
I mean, her milk was no good.
Well, I'm not saying her milk was no good. I'm saying that he wasn't getting enough of it. As far as the infection, what she told you was a lie about an infection. She's the one that originally told us she had an infection. She was the one that told us that her milk ducts had clogged. So we ran tests when we took her to Mercy based on what she had told us. So we took her milk, ran a test on her milk. We took her white blood cell count to see if she had any infection, because that is what she told us. We never told her she had an infection. Her milk was fine. There was no parasites. There was no nothing in her milk. Her white blood cell count was perfect. And she even told us that 3 weeks, 3 weeks prior, she hadn't even been able to produce milk, and that her milk had just started coming in within the past 3 days.
Yeah, during that time, I was feeding them out of the bottle. Like, she would pump in there. I mean, that's why I was... Oh, God.
What I'm saying is, his intestines were completely empty. There was nothing in his intestines at all. I mean, you can look at him from when he was born to when he passed. If you put the two pictures side by side, you can look at him and tell he's not a healthy baby. I mean, you can look at him and tell that he was underweight, or he lost a lot of weight from the time he was born.
Yeah, I know that they're supposed to lose a little bit of weight, but not...
So, I mean, did he look like he lost weight to you?
Yeah, he looked like he had lost some, but he didn't look super unhealthy to me. I've been feeding him out of the bottle, and...
Well, the way the baby works, they're supposed to be back up to their birth weight within 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks. And it had been about,
6 weeks, almost 7. And he only lost half an ounce in the hospital. So he didn't lose a whole lot of weight in the hospital. I mean, I've talked to the doctors, I've talked to the lactation consultant that worked with you guys, or not worked with you, but just checked on you guys to make sure the milk was producing, make sure the baby was being able to latch on, make sure, she could hear the sucking sounds and all that. And, the time that you guys were in the hospital, there was no issues. I don't know really what was going on while you guys were at home, but, without a doubt, based on the state medical examiner's medical opinion and the pediatric doctor at Dornbecker, Data was not getting any food. And it's not something that just happens overnight. It's a prolonged period, to where their body gets in that position to where they're not able.
Well, I know at least while she was working, she would provide me with the bottles and everything to feed him. I can't believe that.
But, the test that we ran on the milk,
it was good.
There was, for what they tested for, to see if there was any parasites or anything in the milk, there was none. And her her white blood cell count was, perfect. I mean, it's between like 4.63 to 11, just a normal range, and hers was like 4.9 something. So, I mean, there was no signs of any infection, and that's what she had told us, that she had an infection, and that her milk ducts had clogged, and then that's when you mentioned to go get formula, and she's like, no, I think my milk is coming back. And as far as the water, no doctor recommends water, none. And at one point she said she's given, like mashing up peas and giving it the pea juice. There is no nutritional value in water or peas.
Right.
When a baby is born and a baby is eating, the only thing he needs is milk, whether it be breast milk or whether it be a approved formula. And if you saw him that he had lost weight basically, and was not back to where he was, why didn't you call the doctor?
She was the one that was supposed to be, in charge of communicating with the doctor and all of that stuff. And she had told me she'd been calling him, and
she hadn't. I have only 2 contacts they had was the appointment that y'all no-showed for, the first 2-week appointment. And then she made another appointment, and you called, or somebody called and canceled it. They were the only 2 contacts that the doctor had. The whole phone call thing, that didn't replace an appointment. I mean, the baby needs to be seen. I mean, obviously there were some issues.
right. I was going off of what she was telling me because I had no
But you're the dad. You're just as responsible to make sure that baby's well-being as her. I mean, if you saw that that Data wasn't gaining weight and losing weight, you should have picked up the phone. Because, I mean, like you said, this was your 4th kid. So, I mean, you've been through it 3 times already. You have a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, and you who's 2. So you know what for their weight and stuff like that, if they're not as much as you say he was eating, he should have been gaining a ton of weight.
Yeah, and I honestly can't speak for the times that I was working or out of the house. I can only speak on the times that I was feeding him. And
I can tell you Data was not getting enough food. And according to his intestines and his body, it appears he wasn't getting any food. And I'm pretty sure this probably happened from the time you guys got home and slowly, gradually built up until where Data just gave up. He had nothing else to go off of.
Okay, so at the end of his interrogation, he was placed under arrest as well. I don't know. It's just sad to know that this little baby was starving and the mom was doing lactation porn, Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just
other people got the breast milk instead of the baby.
It's just plain dumb. Like, how did you not know that the baby was starving?
And to give the baby water when you should never give a baby water.
7 weeks old.
Yeah. So baby Data entered this world as quickly as he left it. After their arrest, I found an article where a man named Nathan Feldhorn, who knew the couple, described their house as shanty and that it reeked of cigarette smoke. In an interview with the Glendale Daily Carrier, a neighbor who was home on January 22nd said, quote, "The girl came running over here, banging on the door and started screaming that her baby wasn't breathing," end quote. She went back to the house with Hancock, where a 911 dispatcher was on speakerphone and a man was giving the baby CPR. Now, Stephen named Data and his 3 other children after Star Trek characters and terms. And the reason why I'm saying this, because this is going to come up later with Amanda. That was a random fact. But anyway, Stephen and Amanda, they, one of their friends named Brittany England said that Stephen was one of the most caring people that she knows. And she said, quote, "I am devastated, but I can say that they are not some cold-blooded killers. They may not have been living right or been great parents, but the baby malnourished. Oh my God, I can't speak. Malnourished from the beginning, and he shouldn't have left the hospital, period." England, that girl, same girl, said that she had talked to Amanda about a week after the baby passed, and that she was completely distraught, broken in a state of not knowing what to do. Now, under that article, people were able to leave comments, and this is some of the comments that people left.
Oh, gosh.
"I hope they get life in prison without parole. Poor baby. Amanda is no killer. She has a beautiful heart and would never hurt a child. Trust me. That bitch sold her milk on cam. I watched her sell the shit for tokens to make money. She was on cam all the time while the baby was always asleep, never getting up to change it or anything. Why be on cam 24 hours with a 2-year-old and a newborn? Get real." Another person said, "Are you serious? These dumb fools are murderers, period. They should get life in prison. No one is going to trust your ignorant ass either. She has no heart either. You're right. She'll never hurt a baby. She killed one. Seriously, get real and find a life." Another person said, "What do you mean she would never hurt a child? She did hurt a child. She caused the child's death for money." Another person said, "I have known Stephen, aka Mikey, for a long time. His home in San Diego was filthy and covered with roaches. It doesn't surprise me that his lack of responsibility was what took poor Data from this world. He was always more interested in the next high or drink would be instead of caring for his home or first baby mama. It's disgusting that people would still be supporting him in this situation." The baby's mother even posted pictures of the baby dead on her Facebook. Who does that?
Oh,
Okay, so now I'm going to jump to the sentencing. In June 2016, Amanda was convicted of first-degree manslaughter, a single charge of first-degree criminal mistreatment, and 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor were dismissed. She amended her plea from not guilty to no contest. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison with credit for time served. I didn't find that many details for Stephen, but his trial took place in April 2017. And when I found his inmate profile, it looks like he got a 10-year sentence as well. And as far as I know, they are both due to be released February 15th, 2025. So not far from now. One more thing. When I was researching all this stuff, I found a site where you can write a prisoner and came across Amanda's profile. I'm not really shocked since she was always, loving to be in front of the camera. And it almost seemed like a dating profile. And it said, "Meet Amanda. I'm a pretty unique individual on a journey towards my future. I'm a certified cosmetologist currently tutoring GED students. I spend my time dancing, beading, writing, listening to music, and making the most out of my day. My interests include Star Trek," just saying, "anime, reading, the cosmos, learning, laughter, and stimulating conversation. Positivity and nerdom are always welcome. I can message through blah, 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 blah. Find me there." And it also lists her education and a couple of her photos, which I posted on Facebook already. I mean, it's just wild. But anyways, that's it. That's all for today's episode. It was just about evil parents and a poor baby dying. I hope that I didn't traumatize you, and that I hope that the audio was enjoyable to listen to at least. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back next time with a new episode. That's all. Goodbye.
disturbing. Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, Nayoka here. If you can't get enough of Operation Evil, consider supporting the podcast by joining our Patreon. There are many perks and different tiers to choose from, but regardless of what tier you pick, you will have a shout out from us in at least one 30-minute bonus episode per month that is exclusive to our supporters. If you can't join our Patreon, consider buying us a coffee. The links can be found in our show notes. Or if you'd like to support us for free, rate our show on the app that you listen to us on, tell a friend, like and share our Facebook page. Anything like that we appreciate. And just those little things make such a huge difference, and it helps get the word out. We appreciate each and every one of you. And I just wanted to thank you guys so much for everything that you do and for listening to us. Goodbye.